Good Sunday morning. Welcome to Locally on the Links. I'm Rich Roth, and I'm joined in studio by a guy who has made his living playing golf. Unbelievable. What a lucky guy. Dick Mast joins me in studio. Great career on the PGA Tour. Still playing on the Senior Tour. And I think, Dick, when we spoke with you about a month or so ago, you were talking about getting ready to go down to, you just qualified for a senior PGA event that you'll be heading down to in a few weeks in Florida. And if that goes well, be playing next year in the Senior PGA Championship. So lots going on. Game pretty good right now?
Actually, I feel pretty good right now. I've had some issues this year with hip and back and hand and everything else that happens. Not necessarily able, but probably. So this is the least I've played this year. I've been able to practice enough to stay, in range of getting ready. So I did qualify for the National Senior PGA, and if I finish in the top 17, which I did the year before out in Oregon, then I will be eligible again to play in the Senior PGA. So that'd be fun.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds great. I mean, and you get a chance to play great golf courses, potentially make some pretty good money, I'm guessing, right? I've
done it all my life as far as not the money part, but a little bit, but playing great golf courses. It's fun to wake up in a new place and the different types of people and so on and play these great golf courses.
Is there one course that stands out that that you would rank above all the others that you've played in? I mean, I'm sure you've played all the great golf courses.
That's a good question. I get asked that a lot.
Yeah.
And Pebble Beach is my first answer. Wow. And actually Spyglass at Pebble Beach.
Really?
People don't talk about Spyglass much. It's just inland about a mile, and it's pine tree lined, and it's very hilly. Has about 2 holes on the ocean, but the rest of it's inland. And probably because I played well there, my very first tournament was Pebble Beach, or my second tournament, actually. San Diego was first in 1974. And I played well. I shot 68 at Spyglass, and it was really tough in those days because the ball didn't go as far as they do now. Now some of these golf courses are not obsolete, but they're much easier because they're hitting it 50 yards farther in the air than we used to.
Is that because of technology? Is it because of golfers caring about their body more?
I would say it started with technology. The technology allowed a bigger man to play. The average size best players back in the day in Hogan was like 5'9", 5'10". And then, as technology, like the equipment was an inch shorter then. So leverage there. As like I had short arms, I needed longer clubs. The technology has helped me tremendously, even though I'm only 5'10". So the technology has allowed 6'2", 6'3" guys not to have to bend over so far, and so the game has changed that way, and they can be more athletic. They can swing harder more often. The faces are more forgiving. The grooves stop the ball quicker. You don't have to be as careful of a flyer. There's just a whole lot of sweet spots bigger on a driver. You can whale at it. The ball doesn't fly up into the wind and go away. It flies up into the wind and holds its trajectory more. You can't work the ball as much, so it's more straighter shots. You can have one shot. There's a lot of things that went into it. But technology led it.
One of the interesting things, and I told you this before we jumped on the air, but I just spent some time with my dad and my brother down at Pinehurst, and, at the resort itself, there are all kinds of pictures of the old days, right? And the great old golfers, the Hogans. And the amazing thing to me was Bobby Jones, right? I mean, these guys used to wear suits and ties when they played it. I'm sitting there going,
what a handicap.
How did they do that?
It was a gentleman's sport. Not anymore after the Ryder Cup.
No. Let's talk a little bit about the Ryder Cup, and and then we'll also talk more about what you've got going on, and still teaching and working out of Poplar Grove. So we'll kind of talk a little bit more about that. But let's do it. Let's dive into the Ryder Cup because the first 2 days was sort of a bloodbath for the U.S. And, thankfully they bounced back that final day. I don't think there was a ton of, interest in it until they really started coming back in the singles matches because the U.S. was so far behind, and it didn't feel like they were playing poorly the first couple days, but it's like every time the U.S. did something, boom, Europe would just come in right on top of them and, either, make a long putt or whatever to tie the hole or win the hole. And it just felt like the U.S. couldn't get ahead, and best players weren't playing, as like the best players in the world. I mean, what was your reaction to the first couple of days of the Ryder Cup?
Well, like all of us, I was disappointed in the what happened, but both teams were strong enough that they could have done that to each other. And if you look at the statistics, ball striking wise, they were very close to being the same the first 2 days. But that's where technology, they keep stats, started helping you look and you go, oh, you played so poorly. Well, not really. Tee to green, we were about the same. Both were very good, by the way, because the conditions were soft. They stick it close a lot. But the Europeans, the first 2 days were 9.5 points up in just putting, which is just astronomical in scores. So they beat them like a drum.
First of all, let's talk about the course because Bethpage Black has hosted a couple of U.S. Opens and a PGA Championship as well. And, we know how to set up the U.S. Opens. And it's a very, very difficult golf course to begin with. But it wasn't set up that difficultly, and that was at the behest of the American team because
Keegan had the advantage of setting the course up the way he wanted to, and it would have been set up for our advantage if it was dry.
Okay.
That's what he was counting on, but it rained and it got soft.
Yeah.
And so what happened is but, it was you have to adjust.
Right.
And they adjusted best.
Right. Same
because the golf courses are hard, firm over in Europe, too. And that's the advantage Europe still has and has gained advantage because the golf courses over there, I mean, when you play over there, you just can't imagine that from 100 yards you have to bounce a wedge in there because the green's not going to hold it sometimes. And the wind and the different weather, they battled that all their life. All these guys still are old enough that they've played in those conditions where the Americans haven't played as much.
Right.
Just a major or two. They go over there and play where they've played, grown up like that. So you have to have a lot of shots. So that's where they're very strong. The other reason that Europe is so strong is I qualified in 2012 for the senior. I didn't have status over here, so I went over there through the tour school. I was welcomed like one of the guys. I was shocked. They just welcomed me in like another brother golfer.
Stop for just a second and back up. You qualified for what?
The European senior, sorry.
The European team?
Yeah. Well, It wasn't the team. It was for the tour.
Okay,
European,
the European
Senior Tour.
Okay, gotcha.
Because I didn't have full status over here.
Gotcha,
on
okay.
ours. So I wanted to play, and also it would enable me to, if I got my card, I could play in the British Senior right away. 3 majors I'd have gotten in right away. So it was well worth going over there, and I ended up not only playing a couple because in Spain and so on, but because I had one good tournament here and I got my status back. And I ended up playing over here. There's more money over here, so forth. But why was I saying that?
Well, you were talking about the conditions, and
so
playing in those conditions.
And also the team camaraderie.
Yeah.
They stay in the same hotel over there, and it doesn't cost 3 times as much. They get a discount. Just where over here it's so much more individual. And we can talk about that too with Scotty. I think that's part of what happened there. Same with Tiger. Tiger had a huge adjustment. He didn't have that good a record in the Ryder Cup when he started out because he's so trained to have his own thing. But when you start all of a sudden somebody else's ball is counting at the same time yours is, it's almost a distraction sometimes when you've trained yourself to be individual so much.
Dick Mast joining me here on Locally on the Links, and we're talking Ryder Cup. And that was going to be one of the first questions I asked is, does Europe just care more about it? Do they want it more?
I would say yes. I think because we got beat pretty bad the last few times, that we're starting to care a lot more. It used to be just the Americans just hammered them in the past, and now they've hammered us. And so
this was supposed to be the one, though, at Bethpage with that New York public course crowd, right? And, the excitement and the anticipation and our home turf and Keegan Bradley, a New York type guy. And, this was supposed to be, okay, this is where we get it back. And 2 days in, you're looking, going, did we even watch day 3? And I guess to the Americans' credit, they fought hard.
Sure.
In singles on the final day, they didn't
Almost
just throw
back.
They did.
It was close. If Victor Hovland, that's a standing rule that has happened in the past. If you're hurt, they just split the points. But how hurt do you have to be? Do you just, hey, I'm not playing good, or how hurt are you? So that's something that's going to be addressed. Either have an alternate there that can play for them. I'd like to see the captains play both against each other, because I think Keegan had a big advantage this time.
Right.
Luke is a very good player, but I don't think he's been playing as much.
Talk about the pressure. First you brought up Scotty.
Yes.
And Tiger as well didn't have a great Ryder Cup record.
Yeah.
The difference of playing a team game versus an individual game.
Yeah, you talk about a game face. Tiger was a little more grr than Scotty looks. But Scotty just, he's very objective, and believe me, I've played in these type of events before like this, and all of a sudden you have a partner, like I'm more aggressive than most guys, so I look at a penalty and say, if I go in there, it's just one shot. But now when you hit it in for your partner, you feel bad.
Yeah.
So it's really a mindset, and I think that Europe has had in the past a better team mindset and more camaraderie. And I give a lot of credit to Luke Donald. He really prepared him for this crowd, and I thought the crowd was out of hand. I think that they were egged on a little bit. I think Rory could have handled it a little better than he did. You don't harass a crowd like that and not expect it to come back 3 times as bad.
Well, and one of his comments afterwards was, golf's better than this, right? This type of behavior shouldn't be accepted.
He was right in that statement.
Well, he was right, but
a little bit hypocritical.
Well, he's telling the crowd F you and flipping them off with a middle finger. And it's like,
you can't do that.
You can't do that and then blame them for
there were some bad things that happened, and it's probably more 10% of the crowd, and then they got the other 50% going. But this needs to be addressed. Hey, have a home turf advantage by screaming when yours make a birdie and when they make a birdie. and just like in basketball or anything else. And rugby might be a little different. I don't know, but golf is still a gentleman's game, and you want to root just harder for your home team.
What ultimately, bottom line, U.S. makes that great comeback. We were talking before we came on the air about Russ Henley. Had a real great opportunity to close things out against Shane Lowry, which would have kept things going and brought things right down to the wire. But 2 very reasonable putts that he left short on 17 and 18 and wound up costing the U.S. the opportunity. Leaving
the moment is the deal.
Yeah.
And, we talked about that, and then Hovland pulling out an injury, and they split the point. If they didn't split that point, that would have put a lot more pressure where it needed to be. You can say if and that, with referees' calls, all that.
Right.
But it came down to 1 or 2 putts at the end. But obviously the U.S. didn't just play better. They were already playing well. They started making putts. And honestly, the not the pressure, but the atmosphere probably wore the Europeans out a little bit because Luke prepared them for that. They used, I think it was so bad that they used that for energy the first couple days to adrenaline.
Yeah, kind of fed off
to
that.
just make a putt, just to quiet them down.
Well, and it felt like too, and I wound up running into somebody, who was at the event on Friday. So day one of the Ryder Cup. And, and the comment that I made to him was it felt like, and they talked about this in the TV coverage, it felt like the crowd was just waiting for something to happen to really get involved. And that crowd wasn't very involved the first couple days. But it's like they're waiting for something, and the U.S. could never get it going. And a lot of credit goes to Europe because they kept topping us.
That's what their goal was, quiet them down. Luke Donald apparently did a lot of psychological things with the players, getting them to be together more, and preparing for it and preparing them for the harassment that, the tougher crowds in Baltimore and New York and they've had that before, and he's had past experience. Plus, he had 11 guys back that knew what he thought and how to. So, very experienced team, both sides. You have it again, it could go the other way.
Oh, for sure. For sure. But it didn't.
No.
We got to take a quick break here. But when we come back, more, and we'll talk putting and get some tips from Dick Mast here on Locally on the Links. Rolling along here on Locally on the Links, presented by the Omni Homestead. Dick Mast. Great career on the PGA Tour, still playing on the Senior PGA Tour, and great asset here locally, teaching and giving lessons up at Poplar Grove. And best way to get in touch with you, Dick?
I'll call Poplar Grove, 434-946-9933. 9933.
One of the things you touched on with me when we were talking during the break was, lessons, and everybody comes out and they want to work on their driver, they want to work on their long game, and I know you've said this, and man, so many other great golfers, teachers, the same thing. You want to improve your scoring, you work on your short game. And in the previous segment, we were talking about Ryder Cup and how the U.S. wasn't making enough putts early. They started falling. Russ Henley leaves a couple of pretty makeable putts short that would have won the is that the cardinal sin, to leave a putt short?
In my mind.
I mean, the old saying is never up, never in, right?
But you got to remember, Ben Crenshaw, one of the greatest putters ever, said, just remember, a putt that goes by didn't go in either. He was a funny guy.
But at least it had a chance, right?
Yeah, well, he had a point.
Yeah.
The putt that goes by doesn't go in either.
It doesn't go in either. When it comes to putting, is there what when someone comes to you and wants to take a putting lesson, or they want to improve their putting, I can't make anything, I can't get a feel for the greens. How do you even start when you start helping people?
First of all, most people don't come and ask for a putting lesson. Amazingly, they always want a lesson. So you have to kind of, prod them and say, well, what's going on? And, you need a short game lesson more than you do the other, or as well. And that is the name of the game, scoring. And that's what happened to the Americans first 2 days. They played as well, and they lost, got drummed, but it was on the greens. So putting is very important. You asked why, how do you prepare? Well, the biggest thing you do is you always assess the lie, whether you're on the green or off. But on the green, you do the same thing. What kind of grass is it? Is it Bermuda? Does it have a strong grain in it? Does it have a lot of slope? And so where does the fall line go from the highest point to the lowest point? Those are all things you have to look at before you even take a stroke. So, how much loft do you need on a putter? Sometimes we change putters or bend the same putter. I don't like bending the same putter, but usually I have a backup putter on slow greens. I'll use a putter with more loft like they used to use in the 60s and 70s before they just the blades got so sharp and they cut them down and they're more the same. That's the advantage that the PGA Tour has, by the way, is the greens are almost identical every week, other than bent grass or Bermuda, but the speed is usually pretty close.
How big a difference does the type of grass make? Because I'm willing to bet that most everyday golfers, you go to a different course, you're not looking at the type of grass or that type of stuff. Is that,
well,
do we
typically
need to
in the
be?
same territory you're on Bermuda, but there's more Bermuda coming in now because they perfected it, they blended it, they've made it less grainy. It's amazing what technology has done with grasses. So they're not as severe as they used to be. But the public golf course, you still have to be prepared because some weeks it might not be mowed as close. They're aerating or working on the greens. So there are times when you want to have more speed. If the green's rough, I recommend having more speed, cutting the break in half, and kind of playing the weave effect, I call it. And then if they're really quick, now you can die it in the hole and depend on the ball rolling on that intended line, where a slower green might bounce off line at that speed.
So slower greens, you want to cut the amount of break that you play?
Yeah, cut it in half. Say
Okay.
if it's a left edge, play it left center.
Okay.
If it's left center, play it straight. And hit it into the back of the cup. Shoot at the back of the rim in basketball, kind of. And then on really good greens, you can die it in. So there's a lot to reading putts. You asked about that. The fall line from the high point to the low point, you try to find that in the green. Even if you've never played the course, you can kind of look and see that's going to be the straight putt. So amazingly, what they've found is that if you draw a clock on the green, say you're 10 feet away, and you go 12, 3, 6, and 9 on the clock, the ball will break from 3 to 12, if you go backwards, the same amount that it does. So once you find the fall line, whichever side you're on, it will break that direction toward the fall line. So just that alone will give you a hint. I don't see much here, but the fall line's there. I think it might go right just a little bit. So it's very important to understand that concept of finding where the top to the bottom of the green is.
What about water? It always breaks towards the water, especially if you're, near the ocean or something like that, or away from the mountains, right? Where in the mountains, does that hold any water for lack of a-
absolutely. When I went to California, everything breaks towards the ocean, and you don't see it on Poana as easily. But it definitely does. But that's more for the drainage. Usually drainage is going toward the water, and it doesn't have some magnet over there. Or it goes south. Generally, it goes southwest is a general, especially Bermuda. But bent grass will tend to just follow the slopes. So you'll see white and dark sheen on the green, and when it's dark, the grain's into you or uphill. And when it's shiny, it's down grain or downhill, and bent tends to follow the slopes, so that's how you read speed on the slopes.
And if
it's dark, you're probably going uphill.
Okay, and if you're going into the grain, then it's gonna be a little bit slower putt.
Definitely.
Okay, interesting.
But especially bent, the grain isn't as big a problem as Bermuda, so you can just play slope by the color.
And we've got about a minute left. Is there any other tip that you can offer folks to help them with their putting?
Yeah, putting mirrors, lasers. Make sure you're aiming where you think you are. So setup is very important. Balance is very important to be in the balls of your feet so you're not stuck in cement. Even though you're not moving, you need to have a live energy going through you. So balls of your feet like you're guarding somebody in basketball, and aim. Work on your aim and alignment.
And again, if you're interested in a lesson with Dick Mast, reach him at Poplar Grove, 946-9933.
That's correct.
And good luck in a couple weeks down in Florida.
I appreciate it.
Look forward to hearing some great results.
Yeah, thanks, Rich. Always enjoy it.
Dick Mast joining me here on Locally on the Links. Use those putting tips, folks. It can help improve your score. Back next Sunday. Enjoy the week.